Welcome home, it's December 6th, and the episode title is Momentum and Spaceships. Gear Games won the RPG Publisher Spotlight, and I'm yet to get in touch, but I should have a contact email address from a few years back from the launch of the publisher's fantasy steampunk game Volcana. It's the start of the month, and it's the end of the year, so patrons are getting to vote on who will be the first publisher in the spotlight in 2026. Once again, we've got 5 names for me to try and pronounce. Here goes. The candidates for January 2026 are Christian Allaire, Wild Magic Surge, D20 Play, Star Trial RPG, No Plot, Only Lore. I have started to add half-baked RPG essays to the Geek Native news announcing these votes, just so there's more to read. Skimpy posts feel wrong to me. This month, I was thinking about that famous moment in the Great War when British and German soldiers stopped fighting to celebrate Christmas together. It's a nice and horrible story at the same time, and I don't think we see it in TTRPG plots very often. Baddies tend to stay baddies. You don't often, for example, discover that the bandits you have been sent to wipe out are the very same friendly people who celebrated with the PCs a couple of inns ago. I'm going to stay with lists of publishers and talk about Dragonmeet for a bit. Dragonmeet is the popular TTRPG convention in London, which this year moved to the EXP, and that's where big Comic Cons go. Geek Native was not there. Dragonmeet has awards and bronze, silver and gold winners, but let's just list the gold here. The best RPG goes to Mappa Mundi by 3 Sales. The best expansion goes to the One Ring expansion by Free League. Best accessory goes to Dumb Dares and Silly Side Quests by Loke Battlemat. And the best adventure goes to One Shot Wonders by Roll and Play. I'm pleased for 3 Sales, and I note that Mappa Mundi is a rare thing. A pacifist RPG. It's full of monsters, but you don't fight them. The timing was also great, as at Dragonmeet, 3 Sales announced the Kickstarter date for their next game, Gallows Corner. Geek Native has been blogging about this alternative history hex scroll for a while now, and unlike Mappa Mundi, this one is going to be full of brutal fights. There's a pre-release up at DriveThruRPG, and now we know that the launch for the Kickstarter happens in the first week of February. If February feels like a long way off, then let me tell you about something you should be doing right away. If you've a paid-for Fantasy Grounds license, then you might be wondering what the Virtual Tabletop's pivot to free-to-play means to you. Well, it means that you've paid for a thing that you don't need to have paid for. To soften that blow, Smiteworks has been speaking to their publishing partners and have put together some compensation rewards to claim. Not credit, free stuff. And you have until the end of the year to do that. I've claimed them all. And while I appreciate the offer, I also recognise that some customers are still disgruntled. There's not much in the way of map or dice assets, and you don't get started in any new TTRPGs. What the move to free-to-play does do though, and by offering up users the same collection of freebies, is we get more people on board with the system. Virtual tabletops live or die by momentum. The more people who have them, the easier it is to get a game on the virtual tabletop. The easier it is to get a game on the virtual tabletop, the more people are likely to use it. You see, it becomes a virtuous circle. And there's been lots of progress in VTT technology over the years, but I think there's been a struggle in looking for group technology. This week, I spoke to Holger of the Estonian-based Group Finder website about this very topic. Group Finder is a free-to-use website and Android app. It's expanded into English language markets, and I wanted to know about the business model because it's currently free-to-play, and without clear answers on the sustainability of that, I would be suspicious. Holger and the team at Group Finder have an answer. They are about to launch a paid-for feature which lets groups and players highlight their own posts on the Looking for Group board. In other words, you can pay a bit more and be a bit noticeable. I think this is a good approach because it keeps Group Finder free to use, but like any Looking for Group solution, it does rely on there being enough interest to make the highlight feel like a worthwhile spend. I'm excited by Arc Dream Publishing's news this week. That also involves the recruitment of players. The Delta Green publisher has announced that playtesting for the Black Company TTRPG has opened. Glenn Cook's fantasy novel is about a mercenary group caught up in a grueling war against an evil wizard called the Lady, who has escaped from a magical prison and is now well on her way to retaking the known world. I'm a fan of the book. I trust Arc Dream to get this right, but it will not be easy. In the series, there was skirmish, siege and war action, and we'll need that in the TTRPG. But there was also a main character who had to make leadership decisions and who got personally caught up in big events. And I'm not sure the same thing can happen to each of the PCs. The playtest rules have stress and trauma in them, which feels appropriate. I also think they're going to make a twist to the novel's plot so that we can play in the setting introduced by the earlier books rather than the events that follow. You can also stream your actual play and be one of the first to do so. But we'll have to wait before the Black Company is finished. In the meantime, there are plenty of new games, and I've looked at 3 this week. All 3 get the thumbs up. I reviewed Grimsbury, a folk horror of mud and magic with some nuclear power thrown in for good measure. Grimsbury is an English town that always makes me think of boring office jobs and paperwork, but take that and throw in some Stranger Things meets Wicker Man's vibe, and you've got a great setting for horror. I also looked at the good Hexcrawl Fly Me to the Moon. The game uses retroclone rules to explore a quirky lunar landscape with a mix of danger and the surreal to discover. There is reincarnation, but that does not mean dead characters return to life the same race as they were when they died. In quirky timing, I also took a look at the quick start to Old Oak Games Beyond the Woods. Old Oak Games is the publishing company that Emmett Bryan created after leaving Warhammer and Cubicle 7 behind. Beyond the Woods feels dangerous and different from other 5e high fantasy. However, the news this week is that Beyond the Woods will be moving to Son of Oak Games' Mist Engine. That's a tag-based language-first alternative to the stats and numbers of 5e. So, let's watch this space. That Old Oak Games is doing well after leaving Cubicle 7 is good news. This week we have headlines that Arc Games is leaving Embracer. Embracer did seem to buy everyone, including Asmodee, at one point. Arc Games has bought itself out of the family. And we care about Arc Games because they published the computer game version of Frosthaven, Star Trek Online, and the Neverwinter Dungeons & Dragons MMO. Arc Games also published the Remnant games, but they are staying with Embracer. Embracer, like many publishers, is not having an easy time of it. And if giants like that are struggling, what about indie tabletop game publishers, or those of us who write about publishing news? Rascal News announced this week that prices would go up, not for everyone and not by much, but up. They're running a special $1 joining deal from now until the new year called Yippee-Ki-Yay Ankle Biters. And how are we doing? Well, I'm still mucking around on random projects. I finally have my spaceship name generator live. Now, these are not uncommon on the internet and probably redundant like the rest of us in the world of artificial intelligence. Mine, though, was a labour of love and hopefully a bit quirky. It uses Ian M. Banks' The Culture series and John Scalzi's Tribute spaceship names as inspiration, and therefore you might get names like The Friendly Threat, Under the Weather, It's Complicated, possibly, Healing the Guilt, Cost an Arm and a Leg. I know some The Culture expert is going to say that I messed up, but hopefully GMs in a hurry can use a generator without their players making the same accusation against them. I wrote up 3 Shadowrun 5e bundled tiers over at the Bundle of Holding, which is a great way to go from having no Shadowrun to lots of it. And lastly, I want to mention some tech that we're testing in Geek Native. It's a new WordPress plugin from Automatic and the Internet Archive. The latter is a great charity that, for free, tries to preserve the internet like a library. When Geek Native links to any page, the plugin alerts the Internet Archive and that their system can then detect it and consider whether to archive the page or not. My hope this is that more small indie publishers get their design notes, news announcements and other public content in the archive. There's also a benefit that if that content is then deleted, the plugin is supposed to update the Geek Native link to the archive copy of the deleted content. And in my years writing for Geek Native, I have noticed many great gaming blog posts and content vanish to link rot. However, in my early tests, the results are a bit mixed. There's been quite a few false positives, and this is likely due to web servers telling the Internet Archive to go away. And that's not ideal, because if a web page is still live, then I want people to reach it, not the archive copy or the empty archive. I will have to toggle the systems and see if I can make it work better. On that note, take care, toggle well, and see you next week.